You don't put a saddle on a Mustang. You just let him go.
Richie on the bump. He'll pull. He'll fire. He'll score for three. Oh, my goodness. Kaba. Right corner Trey for three. That's good. It's an 8-0 BYU run.
We're getting used to verbiage like that. BYU's offense has been absolutely dynamite, most recently in that 96-95 heart-stopping thriller against Arizona. Today, we're going to play our own little heart-stopping game. Not really, but we like to think that it will cause some drama. And I know that many of you are used to big deal, no deal. Well, we're going to play which is the bigger deal today, Jason. Okay. A twist on the old game on BYU Sports Nation. Okay, so number one, which is the bigger deal today? BYU being ranked number 25 in the AP poll for the first time this season, or Richie Saunders winning BYU's first ever Big 12 Player of the Week in men's basketball?
To me, and it's great that Richie, first of all, the fact that he's the first ever BYU player to win Big 12 Player of the Week is pretty cool.
It didn't happen last year, not once.
Did not happen once last year. And so for Richie to be able to have that honor is really cool. But I bet you if you asked Richie this question, he would agree that it's being ranked in the top 25 because that is a collective, that is a team acknowledgement. So for me, that's what, because that's going to garner a lot more attention and it means more for what the team is trying to accomplish. So for me, it's being ranked in the top 25 at number 25.
They are intertwined, are they not?
Yes.
Because if Richie Saunders doesn't play the way that he does and isn't the Big 12 Player of the Week, we're not sitting here talking about BYU being ranked, having destroyed Kansas and then won at Arizona, because Richie was incredible against Arizona. But I tend to agree with you because BYU wasn't receiving a single vote a week ago.
Quite the leap.
Not one. So to go from no votes received at all, not even be sniffing the poll, relatively speaking, to now you're just in, means you did something extra significant. And that is you destroyed Kansas and gave them their third worst loss in program history, a tie for that. And then you won at Arizona, back-to-back ranked wins for the first time since 1988. The collective team, like you said, Jason, number 25 from no votes, that to me is the bigger deal.
It actually, I was thinking about this yesterday, because obviously before the Arizona game, you still had BYU that had won 3 in a row, and you had that massive just dismantling of the Jayhawks. And I wondered, had BYU lost that Arizona game and lost by 1 instead of winning by 1, where they would have been. I would have thought they would have deserved possibly to be ranked anyway, but as it turned out, they wouldn't have been.
They might have received a few votes.
They would have received votes, but they wouldn't have been in the top 25. I actually expected them to be a little higher than 25, and I'm not saying like significantly, but I thought maybe 22, 23 is where I thought they may land. So that turned out to be big because without the Arizona win, they weren't going to be ranked clearly.
Yeah. Being number 25 is clear evidence of that, right? Just getting in the poll. But what a leap by BYU as a team. They've won 8 of 10. They've won 4 consecutive conference games, and they've done that twice now this year. Just checking boxes consistently. New boxes, checking new boxes. Now the next big one, Jason, is can they win a 5th straight game and make that happen against Arizona State, which all of a sudden is kind of becoming a weird game because maybe they're galvanized after their leading scorer leaves the team. They won at Kansas State.
They may be down their leading rebounder as well.
Well, okay, well, that definitely helps BYU's case.
Yes.
Just kind of a weird game because BYU wants to avoid the big game letdown. I believe that they are well coached. The staff is all over it. I don't think BYU is going to all of a sudden just mail it in.
Right.
So
no,
we'll see.
Okay, let's not shortchange, though, talking about what Richie has done. And obviously, him getting the accolades for this week puts a spotlight on what he did this week. But what he has done this season has been remarkable. And what he's done, we know what type of energy guy he's always been, and we've always talked about that. But his consistency offensively this year has been fantastic.
His three-point shooting to lead the way? Are you kidding me? He has gone to another level in that regard. He's BYU's best overall player.
Yeah.
You know, I know there's one guy in the media somewhere that picked Richie Saunders to lead this team in scoring. Do you know who it is? You're looking at him, Jason.
Interesting.
You're looking at him.
I kind of had a feeling that may be where this is going.
Richie has been so good for BYU. Well-deserved award. But again, he's team guy. He'd be like, nah, bigger deal that we're number 25 now.
Well, and remember how close it was. We all saw the pictures of him at the airport in Lexington.
The hug at the bottom of the escalator.
We're like, oh no, they're hugging.
I think you were on the show with me that day.
Yes, you and I were doing the show.
That picture surfaced on social media.
Yes.
Just huge gulp. He's back at BYU, and he did the right thing.
Absolutely. All right, so let's move on to another bigger deal. The win over Kansas by 34 points,
Good grief.
or beating Arizona in Tucson.
I love that we're discussing two just really positive things for BYU.
You can't go wrong with an answer here.
What's the bigger deal here? Kansas had just lost to Utah. Had they not just lost to Utah, Jason, I would probably lean that direction because of how BYU played and how dominant BYU was against a true blue blood, one of the biggest name programs to ever play in the Marriott Center, arguably the biggest name to ever play in the Marriott Center, right along with UCLA, a few others. I'm not going to throw Gonzaga in that conversation for other reasons, okay? But the way that BYU handled Kansas, if it didn't happen after they had lost to Utah, then that'd probably be my answer. But winning on the road, following up what you did against Kansas and having to go on the road to the McHale Center and putting up the most points that Arizona has given up in a home game since Jimmer Fredette helped BYU score 99 all the way back in 2009. The stories, the rhetoric, the drama at the end of the game with the foul. BYU got ranked because they beat Arizona. The bigger deal, and as far as resume goes, the bigger deal is BYU winning that road quad one game against a top 20 team.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is the win at Arizona for all the reasons that you mentioned. The fact that it's a quad one road win. And it comes off the heels of all the attention that you got by beating Kansas as bad as you did, and then immediately going right into SportsCenter and talking to Scott Van Pelt. Like, it got so much run. That's why I think, like, in terms of the game that actually got BYU the most attention, although that may have changed with all of the chanting and everything that gone on for all the wrong reasons, but I still think that the Kansas win is the one that opened more eyes because of the sheer number that you beat Kansas by, and it's Kansas. Kansas, even though this is not the season they would have wanted, they're still the overall bigger program historically. And so when you see BYU just beat them by 34, that catches everybody's attention. So I think that probably got more people's attention. But the bigger win, because when you played Kansas, they were 23. When you played Arizona, they were number 19.
Yes.
The fact that you're beating the higher-ranked team and
Arizona's
you're doing
a better team than Kansas.
Yes, and you're doing it in their building. That, to me, is the answer.
It proves that what BYU is doing right now is not a fluke.
Right.
Because every team can have, the one-off. Okay, look, you played your best game of the season against Kansas. You couldn't miss a shot. You made 10 three-pointers in the first half. Kansas just lost to Utah. They're down. They're clearly not the same. But then you back it up with the win at Arizona. Now BYU is not fraudulent. They absolutely are worth the price of admission, and they are backing up that they are an NCAA tournament team. This locked BYU into the bracket. It took them completely off the bubble. Everyone's bubble. That's another element we didn't talk about in terms of what this Arizona win does and why it's more important than Kansas is. It elevated BYU from clearly off the bubble to just firmly in. They're a lock right now if the tournament selection committee was bracketing today.
See, I actually want to go back to something in the reason that you used against the Kansas game in terms of the fact that they had lost to Utah before took some of the shine in terms of this argument. I actually think the opposite.
Oh, you think because they were a wounded animal?
Because they were embarrassed losing to Utah. I think we all thought, oh, wow, I really wish they hadn't lost to Utah because now what are the chances they're going to come in here and not play one of their best games of the year trying to make up for what happened in Salt Lake City?
And then worst game of the year.
And then for BYU then to beat them worse.
Yes.
I actually think that adds a little something to it.
Interesting. Okay, let's keep this rolling.
Okay.
Which is the bigger deal? Facing Arizona State without their leading scorer, maybe their top rebounder as well, or facing Utah in the regular season finale without their head coach, Craig Smith. Utah letting him go yesterday. Which is the bigger deal?
I still think it's Arizona State without their leading scorer and possibly their leading rebounder as well. Talking about Quaintance, he had a knee injury in their last game, left the game. Still up in the air on what his status is going to be. Probably won't know until till game time.
Okay.
But to me, that's it, especially right now because it's the next game. And like you said, can you extend this streak to 5 games? And you're facing a team for the second time.
Yes.
A team you've already beaten. Now, granted, ASU is struggling. There's no question about it. But we know they still have talent.
Yes.
And it's a game BYU needs to go into Tempe and win. So for me, that's the bigger deal. I don't honestly believe that the coaching change and now the interim person coming in, I don't think that has any effect on the outcome of the game in Provo.
Josh Eilert is the interim head coach of Utah. You know what? That's a familiar name.
Because he did the same thing with West Virginia.
Indeed, he did. Last season, BYU played a game in Morgantown against a Josh Eilert interim-based coached Mountaineers.
Yeah, see, that situation to me, I think, has much less to do with the outcome than what we're seeing at Arizona State.
I agree with you. I'm going to add to the Arizona State conversation the fact that it's a quad 1 road game.
Right.
And they're without B.J. Freeman, their leading scorer. I mean, he's a guy that's shooting 36% from the three-point line, Jason. He's averaging 14 points a game. And then you throw in Jaden Quaintance, the top rebounder. If both of those guys cannot go, I don't care how galvanizing that Kansas State road win was for the Sun Devils. What are they going to do against a BYU team that is playing with the utmost confidence, the most confidence they've had all season long, rightfully so, coming off 4 straight wins, including Kansas and Arizona? So that is the bigger deal. And again, I'll take every break that BYU can get for their resume. It's another quad 1 opportunity. As down as Arizona State is, this still counts as a quad 1 game if BYU wins it. Then they have 3 quad 1 road wins. West Virginia, Arizona, and potentially Arizona State.
And you know as well as I do, that place is going to be filled with royal blue.
Should be an easy ticket. Seriously.
It was, I mean, when the women's team played down there, there were so many BYU fans in attendance down there to watch BYU beat Arizona State in Tempe. That's gonna feel, I'm not saying it's gonna feel like a home game, but they're going to be well represented in Tempe.
Neither situation is great for Arizona State and Utah. The timing of the Utah situation is a conversation in and of itself, but they opted to do what they do. I just think there are so many things that Arizona State has to overcome if you're missing 2 of your most prominent players. And the game is on Wednesday. Utah's going to have some time to build and kind of get used to things over the next couple of weeks.
All right, here is our last one. Biggest deal.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 3 options here. We're gonna open this up a little bit.
All right.
Okay, so we're gonna talk a little bracketology right now. Rocco Miller right now predicting an 8 seed for BYU.
What did I tell you? 8-9 line.
There you go. Playing 9 seed New Mexico.
Okay.
So playing New Mexico or Lenardi's 8 seed BYU playing 9 seed Utah State or the Athletics 8 seed UConn playing 9 seed BYU. So your choices, New Mexico, Utah State, or UConn. Which would be the bigger deal for BYU to face as an opponent?
The biggest deal. Well, come on, in terms of national splash and what's going to resonate with the country, an 8-9 matchup between the 2-time defending national champion UConn Huskies and BYU would be the clear headliner for everybody else in the basketball community. Now, for you and me, it's probably Utah State and BYU on the same seed line.
Right.
That would be an incredibly entertaining, juicy matchup. And it would give Utah State maybe what they want, a shot at BYU because they're not on the Cougars' schedule anymore, at least not for the foreseeable future. This would be the true test of, okay, who's better in basketball, neutral site in the NCAA tournament. So, again, within this Beehive State and rivalry conversation, to me, the biggest deal is Utah State, BYU. Outside of the Utah bubble, though, Jason, it clearly has to be BYU and UConn.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going. The biggest deal that you're going to get more bang for your buck, especially if you get a win, is facing UConn.
Face another Hurley brother?
That's what I'm saying. So to me, that's the easy answer. But I understand exactly what you're talking about. If we're sort of scaling this thing down and focusing on this state and this region, there's no question that it's Utah State. But I think if BYU were to win any of those games, they're going to get the most juice out of beating the Huskies. Mm-hmm. Oh, everybody knows what type of basketball program Utah State is. Very good basketball program. But it's not going to grab people's attention. Oh, did you see BYU beat Utah State? You're not going to get that reaction. You're not going to get that reaction if, oh, did you see BYU just beat New Mexico? You're going to get that reaction if BYU were to knock off UConn.
I kind of hate the idea of BYU having to face UConn in the first round in an 8-9 game.
Yeah.
And then in that bracket being rewarded with Duke or Florida. That is brutal. Brutal draw right there. I don't want BYU on the 8-9 line, but in terms of these matchups, how do you argue with BYU UConn? Although the rivalry dynamic would be so juicy.
For the two fan bases, and like you said, for Utah State specifically,
they get what they want.
They get what they want. They get a shot against BYU. So I completely understand that. But if we're really going with the biggest deal, it's getting a shot at UConn.
Frankly, the best matchup out of those three for BYU in terms of opportunity to win the game is against New Mexico.
Right.
I think New Mexico has some athletic guards. They're big and physical. But what does BYU face every game in the Big 12?
Right.
Athletic guards, big and physical. Okay? The shooters of Utah State are the one that could equalize this thing and make it weird. Oh, fun conversation.
Yeah, love it.
Fun conversation. Jason bringing it without